makes most women start a business? Is it passion, money, or freedom? Welcome to Female Founders, the podcast that takes you behind the scene with women who are founders and CEOs to help you start and scale a successful business of your own. I am your host, Nagelia de Ravin. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Female Founders. In today's episode, I will be having a conversation with Zoss Kraska. Lori is the founder and CEO of GrowthOwl, LLC. With over 22 years of experience in revenue generation, management, corporate sponsorship support, corporate cause marketing, fundraising, corporate social responsibility, and nonprofit consultant. Grab yourself a cup of tea and enjoy this episode. Lori, I love to learn more about your personal journey and how you got into the field of nonprofit consultant. What inspired you to start a career in this area?
Yeah, so I actually spent just under 10 years with PBS and NPR and worked with a group of local stations where myself and a group of other account executives, for lack of a better term, we went out and we found funding from corporations for our local stations. And I absolutely loved doing that. And I realized that I have a really good knack of working and understanding corporations on behalf of nonprofits and other types of purpose-driven organizations. And I absolutely loved what I did, but I always had this entrepreneurial bug and wanted to start my own business. So in 2018, I made the leap. I left my job and started GrowthOwl. And GrowthOwl, specifically, we work with nonprofits, associations, other types of purpose-driven organizations to help them connect to Fortune 1000 companies for resources, funding, and sponsorship. We do that in a lot of different ways, whether it's through training and resourcing or actually doing specific representation on somebody's behalf. But I absolutely love doing it. And it all started with my work in public media.
So let's go back a little bit.
Yeah.
Were you already into nonprofit consultant before that 10 years, before you start working in that station? Or what were you doing way before that?
Oh, good question. So I did do a lot in broadcast sales and broadcast consulting, business consulting, working with broadcast stations to help bring sponsorship to the table. And although I did do some work with nonprofits in the past, I worked for a university as a regional marketing director. So that university was a nonprofit. So, did have some experience that way. But it wasn't until that I got into public media and working with PBS and NPR stations that I really started to understand just the really good partnership that you can have between a nonprofit and corporations that are looking to support them.
So pretty much the seed was already growing in there somehow. You just didn't really get the whole thing out until that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So now with GrowthOwl LLC, do you put the services? Do you do the work for them, or you only train them?
So I can do the work for them, but I have to say that we're moving more towards a model of clients that are interested in training and learning how to do it on their own, which is my preference. Teaching you how to fish, teaching you how to go out and find the revenue, make those connections. How do you do the approach? I think in today's economy that is just continues to evolve, it is going to be necessary for all different types of entrepreneurs and organizations to learn how to be effective in communicating to find funding. Doesn't matter what your role is within the organization, right? So that's why a lot of my business is transitioning towards actual training and resourcing on the how-to. We do still do some of the representation, but like I said, it's kind of really, there's a metamorphosis going on, which I really enjoy, of providing you the tools on how to do it.
So do you come when you go to the training, do you do it for just an individual, or is just like a group of the employees that you're going to train to learn how to do that?
That's a great question. So I primarily work, I do a lot of one-on-one with executive directors of nonprofits, presidents of nonprofits, also board members of nonprofits, also of associations, as well as helping startup founders. There's a lot of startup founders that are struggling getting their communication skills just right to be able to connect with corporations, right? So I do a lot of that one-on-one work. I do some group work as well. I have some options where I can come in to wherever your location is and do some group training. But for the most part, it's a lot of one-on-one, which I like because I really customize it to what you need. Because I work with some executive directors and presidents that have a strong fundraising background, so they know the fundamentals, but maybe they're just missing one or two elements to really be truly effective. Then I work with others that come from more operational backgrounds and they've never been in a situation where they've had to ask for money before. So that's a whole different set of training. So it's really customized based on the individual that I'm working with.
So pretty much, if you go into a nonprofit or corporations, you kind of learn about that company and create the customized package just for that company itself.
That's correct. But I really try to base it on the individual I'm working with. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it really varies depending on what their experience has been or what their goals are in the training. So it is very customized. Yeah.
So you can do that with both nonprofit and corporations, like a profit company, if they wanted your help.
Absolutely. So a great way that for-profit companies work for me is I will have their corporate philanthropy officers or their corporate social responsibility officers reach out to me, sometimes even corporate marketing. Lori, who are the nonprofits we might be able to work with? Who based on our vision and values for how we want to support community engagement, who should we be talking to? So just as I do the same for nonprofits and other purpose-driven organizations on who they should talk to in terms of sponsorship, I do the same thing for corporations in terms of who they might want to align themselves with in the nonprofit sector. So yeah, it works both ways.
That sounds like a new business. Yes, it is. A new business models you should be putting out there. Match.
Yes, that's right. It is a lot like matchmaking. It's like a first date. Sometimes it goes really well. Sometimes you need to find another date.
Exactly. I like it. Yeah. That's a new service in the ground that needs to come out soon.
It. That's right.
So now you have over 22 years of experience in revenue generation, management, and corporate sponsorship support, as you said before. So what are some key strategies or insight you have gained that can help purpose-driven organizations achieve the funding goals?
Yeah. So first, you really have to make the commitment to want to work with corporations. In terms of if you're a nonprofit. What I mean by that is usually nonprofits get a lot of their donations or funding from grants, from other types of foundations, from individual donors, from planned giving. And then corporate support comes along, as I'll call it. And maybe they just put their toe in the water a little bit, but they don't have a strategy. So they're not really successful. So the first thing I say is you have to create some sort of strategy to want to do it, right? And to do it effectively. So that's my first principle that I talk about. And second, you don't want to overwhelm yourself because most people that I work with, they've got 1,000 other things going on besides wanting to get sponsorship or funding from a corporation, right? So the first thing I tell them is don't put together a list of 50 companies you want to talk to. Let's start with a list of one or two and really research those up front, get to know them, because it's going to be much more scalable to work with the rest of your activities for that day. And you'll find that you're much more successful that way because it's easier. And honestly, it's more effective to work with 5 corporations that you've really gotten to know. You've gotten to know what their habits are, who the decision makers are. You've read their annual reports. You know what they're doing in the areas of DEI or corporate social responsibility. That makes you very powerful going in when you're going to contact a decision maker. Versus if you have a list of 50 companies and you just have email addresses and you just are sending an email that's just talking about who you are. So you can see how it's quality over quantity when you're starting. And also, it's very important that during that research, you're also looking at things like LinkedIn. I'm a huge fan of LinkedIn. I use it a lot. Get to know your decision makers. What are they talking about on LinkedIn? What are they liking? What kind of content are they producing? You can reference that when you're reaching out. That's really important. So you're making that personal connection. All of that will help kind of push you to the front of the line of the thousands of others that are also trying to contact them. And my other big piece of advice, if you're starting this strategy, is brevity is your friend. I think where people really have issues, especially nonprofits, they tend to say way too much in that first email or try to get way too much into a first conversation. Remember, this is just step one in your journey of corporate sponsorship or fundraising. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. So if you go into the call or go into that first email thinking this is my one shot, you've already done a disservice to yourself. You have to keep your mindset open that this is just the beginning. So what I work with my clients on in terms of that first step, keep that first email very brief, 150 words. Who are you? What exactly is it about your nonprofit or purpose-driven organization that connects to the company that you're reaching out to, which you found out in that research we talked about? That's why it's so important. And what is it you want next? Do you want a phone call? Do you want the opportunity to send information? Do you want to try to get a meeting? If you keep it to that, you will be surprised at your response rate. I find response rates are much better the more brief you are, because if you think about it, decision makers are bombarded with emails every day. I did an article and did some research for it and found that the average corporate decision maker that oversees corporate funding or fundraising is receiving up to 150 emails a day. Do you think they have time to read? Yeah, your 400, 500 word email? Absolutely not. So if you can get to the point quickly, they will really respect that about you because you're respecting their time. And again, is another way to really give you a competitive advantage. So those are just a few of my initial tips in starting your corporate support journey.
So now, Lori, do you think that they should go more for grants, or do you think the focus should be more into corporate sponsorship?
Well, sometimes there's corporate grants. So if you're working with a corporate philanthropy, which is there's an actual part of the company that is focused totally on providing funding for nonprofits, that's usually corporate philanthropy. Sometimes they have their own grants. Other times companies just want to do well they want to do good for the community. They want to help organizations, and they've set budget aside in their marketing budget or in their diversity, equity, and inclusion budget or their accessibility budget. That's more of a direct one-on-one conversation where maybe you're putting a proposal or a presentation together that has nothing to do with a grant. So it just really depends on who the company is and what the opportunity is. So you have to be open-minded to all of it.
Be open-minded.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, be open-minded because there's not just one way to bring in funding. I mean, there's probably ways to bring in funding that you're more comfortable with. Absolutely. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't try other things.
Yeah. And I think that at the end of the day, the organization needs help and support. And I think any way you can find it, as long as it's aligned with your mission, I think you should be open-minded to it.
Absolutely. And that's where that research up front comes in. I mean, you can find out a lot about companies in terms of what other nonprofits they're supporting that might be like yours. Most companies, I would say 99% of companies that do sponsorship or support through philanthropy, they put on their website what their pillars of giving are, or these are the types of things we support. We support K through 12 education. We support small companion animal rescue. We support food insecurity. So you're getting really good information to know if you should approach them or not, just by doing that little research up front.
So now your book, The Boardroom Playbook, a not so ordinary guide to corporate funding for your purpose-driven organization. So that book's supposed to offer guidance on corporate funding. Could you provide us with a sneak peek into some valuable tips or advice you share in the book?
Sure. So the whole format of the book comes via my process of how I work with my clients. And I call it Me, Me, Mo. And that stands for aligning your mental, your messaging, and your motion, the actual action, in order to get to the funding that you need. So the book is broken out into 3 sections, Me, Me, Mo. So we start with the mental. What are the things you need to do with your mindset? I'm a real big believer that having a positive mindset, being open to new types of experiences, is going to make you really successful in this process. I also talk a lot about that you have to understand the corporation's point of view. I call that corporate depth perception, being able to have empathy for the corporation. So understanding that although getting funding for your organization is your number one priority, when you contact that decision maker at the corporation, that is probably priority 150,720. You're really at the bottom of the list. And your goal is not to make yourself the top priority. Your goal is just to make yourself heard, right? So that goes back to brevity in message, and how you're contacting people is really important. So understanding, again, this is a marathon, not a sprint. It is a long game, and that they have thousands of other things going on that, quite frankly, are more important to them. So building up that stamina, not taking it personally, but staying in within that process, just understanding it, is going to really give you a competitive advantage mentally. And then with the messaging, I talk a lot about, going back to what I said earlier, having brevity is really important, having brevity in your messaging. Also, the type of messaging you're sending out, don't just limit yourself to email. I've had a lot of luck, as well as my clients have had a lot of luck reaching out to people on LinkedIn. It's a lot less crowded, at least right now, reaching out to decision makers on LinkedIn with a very brief message of wanting to connect. And then finally, for that motion, providing you some tools that you need for a really effective proposal or presentation. So proposal example, I have a chapter called Avoiding Pumpkin Spice Proposals. Now, I want to say I am a huge fan of pumpkin spice coffee, pumpkin spice latte. I'm not putting it down in any way. I actually love it. But my whole point in pumpkin spice proposals is sometimes you just need the coffee. A lot of times decision makers will share with me, Lori, you should see some of the things people put in their proposals. There's way too many images. There's way too much cut and paste. You don't need to tell me what my company does. That's something I get a lot of. People will cut and paste the About Us section about the company they're pitching to put in the proposal, and it doesn't make any sense. Why do we do that? Well, we have to fill out the proposal.
Level.
No. Right, exactly. So I give a lot of tips on really effective proposals, like try to keep it to 5 pages. That seems to be the attention span of people. Make sure your font size is good, 11 to 12 point font size, and just be careful with the amount of images you're using. It's really substance over quantity of your proposal. So those are just a few of the things that I do hit on in the book, the Boardroom Playbook.
So now people should just keep it simple and easy to follow, and then don't make them have a headache trying to understand everything you're trying to tell them.
There you go. I do. My only caveat is I understand that you might be given a set of directions by a corporation as to what your proposal should be like, or as to how you should engage. Follow those directions. In no way am I telling you to go rogue or do something they're not telling you. But I would say 90% of the time, you're not given any instruction on how to engage properly in a corporation. So I'm giving you the best practices that have worked for me and have worked for my clients. But if you do have a separate set of engagement rules by a company, you should follow those.
So now, what set your approach apart from other consultant firms and the nonprofit and corporate social responsibility space?
I think that based on my background and the length of time I've been doing this, I've really only worked in the line of corporate support. There are a lot of great companies out there that offer a lot of great services to nonprofits in the area of just overall fundraising or individual giving or creating a really good membership management system. There's great firms out there doing really great work. And what I've noticed is that they tend to just have someone that kind of does consultancy around corporate support. That is all we do at Growth Owl. It's all on engaging with corporations and specifically within the Fortune 1000. So I think we know our niche and know how helpful it is to get to know this niche. So I think that is one area that does set us apart.
So now, why growth owl? Why did you pick that
that's
name?
A great question. Really good. So I've always loved owls. I'm a big animal lover, but I always loved owls. But if you think about an owl, they represent a really good advisor. So owls can make a 270-degree turn of their head, which allows them to see things that others can't. Owls can also see in the dark. They do their best hunting in the dark and their best strategy in the dark. I think a good advisor or a good consultant can look at the darkness within your organization or what's murky and see things that maybe others can't or maybe you can't.
Yes.
And I think, owls have always been associated with wisdom. And I think that, myself, my team, we bring a lot of wisdom to the table. And, all of that really encompasses the owl. And then, of course, growth. Everything is about growing your revenue, growing your fundraising, growing the number of connections you have. So that's how Growth Owl came together.
I love it. So with your experience in both the nonprofit and corporate sectors, so how do you bridge the gap between these two worlds to create a successful partnership and collaborations?
I think that's another thing that does kind of set me apart because I've been on both sides. I can understand and be empathetic to both sides. I also, I'll just pat myself on the back. I read a room really well. And there are things, if I'm in a situation where I'm working with my client, I'm working with a corporation, I can kind of see things going on, whether it's be nonverbal, verbal, their actions, their non-actions. I read that really well. And that helps me make my move in terms of what needs to happen next. So I think understanding both sides and showing empathy for both sides and just having that just sense of I've been here before. I see what's going to happen next. That experience, bringing that all together is what helps make us successful.
So have you ever worked with both? And at the same time, let's say, for example, you have a corporate client that said, hey, we have this nonprofit reach out to us. They would love to work with us, but can you help us? Have you ever end up in the middle of the two of them? You have the corporate, you have the nonprofit, so you are communicate with both to create a deal for the two of them to work together.
Yeah, it's happened twice. Where it just the stars aligned, and I'll tell you that the experience was very positive. But I'll tell you it was positive because I happened to be working with a company that was very specific about what they were looking for in terms of mission, in terms of size, in terms of geography of a nonprofit. That fit my nonprofit clients' target to a T. They were exactly what my corporate client was looking for. So I was able to, through harmony, really bring them together. So the more specific and the more detailed that I can be in terms of why they make a really good match, the chances of it being a really good match and being, providing a harmonious connection are really good. So that's why those instances worked really well.
So do you have any plan in near future to provide that type of service? Imagine that, because so many nonprofits out there are struggling to bring funding, and because they don't have the skills that you have, they don't have that experience that you have for over 20 years. So any plan?
Yeah, so
that type of service?
That is what we do. I mean, the core of what we do is I primarily work on behalf of the nonprofit to bring a for-profit to the table. But how our business is changing is I'm providing the tools more to these executive directors and presidents of nonprofits to learn how to do that themselves. It's a much more empowering experience. So it is what we do. It's just specifically, I think your question was, have I ever had two clients at the same time come together? And there were two instances. So so sometimes it does happen.
It does happen. So yes. Do you help nonprofit just within the US, or do you also go outside of the US?
So I have helped nonprofits in Great Britain. I haven't gone outside of Great Britain. I wouldn't be opposed to it, but there are all different types of nuances that I might not be aware of outside of the United States. I know Great Britain a bit, but there are certain laws, there are certain rules in receiving funding that are outside of the United States that vary per country. So I just put that caveat out there in terms of training. That's something that would be an easier way to work with me. So if you're looking for those tools, like I said, how to empower you to do these things on your own, I think I would be a good fit for you. But if you're looking for somebody that's to really represent you and the funds aren't coming from the United States, that might be somebody else might be a better fit for that.
So now what do you see as the biggest challenges and opportunities for purpose-driven organization?
So I think the biggest challenge is competition. A lot of nonprofits don't like to talk about competition, but you are competing. You are competing for dollars from other nonprofit organizations. So it's important that you start to have some sort of business mindset. Balancing the purpose-driven, mission-driven mindset with a business mindset is essential when you're looking for corporate funding, when you're looking for any type of funding, right? So I think that is a large challenge right now for nonprofits because there are people that have worked in nonprofit for a very long time and they really like that philanthropic part of it. They like the service part of it. But when it comes time to be a bit more operational or to talk about things like budgets or to talk about things like revenue, it gets a little scary. But that's where someone like myself can come in and kind of help quell the anxiety that this is normal. This is where organizations are going. All nonprofits need to have some sort of revenue strategy in order to fulfill its mission. To keep people in the seats that are at your office doing the mission, as well as the people or animals or whomever that you're providing your mission to. It needs dollars. It needs dollars. So
for me, I look at nonprofits as just another business because you need money to survive. Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of people, when they see a nonprofit, they're like, well, you're supposed to be doing this free for me. I'm like, I don't think that's the truth because the nonprofits still need money. If they have staff, they still need to pay the staff. The CEO, the president, or the chair, all these people behind it, that's their time. You need to respect it too because they can be doing something else with their life, but they chose to put the time there. So I think that don't just say this is supposed to be free, but look at it as a way that you are also supporting other people.
Exactly. And really look at what types of organizations are actually nonprofits. Most of the larger healthcare systems in the United States, the hospital systems, are nonprofits. But you might not realize it because of how large they are and because of how much money they spend on staffing, on facilities. I mean, billions of dollars. People don't usually associate billions of dollars with nonprofits, but I'm here to tell you, there are nonprofits that make billions of dollars, but they also put a lot of money back into the community in some way. So you're absolutely right.
So now how can someone reach out to you?
Yeah, so you can check out my website, thegrowthowl.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Lori Zoss Kraska.
So now before I let you go, I have one more question for you.
Sure.
What advice would you give to an individual or even a nonprofit that, lost in paradise on how to actually bring funding to the organization?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to take it back to the advice that I gave earlier when you just start on a corporate strategy. I think this applies to any strategy you have. Start with small, achievable goals. So this is the first time, let's say you're a smaller nonprofit and it's the first time your board members are saying to you, look, we need to bring in X amount of money by the end of the year, which means that you need to bring in X amount of money to fundraise. So start with achievable goals. Like maybe in the month of March, you're going to focus on individual donors and pick maybe 5 individual donors that you can go and see if you could get extra donations from. And then in another month that you start focusing on that corporate support strategy, going back to, okay, let me pick 2 companies in the area that resonate with what we're doing and reach out to them. So really starting with small, achievable goals is going to provide long-term success for you.
Well, thank you so much, Laurie, for giving me the chance to talk to you and to pick your brain a little bit for our listeners and also the one who's going to read the story about you as well. And I thank you for what you are doing because nonprofits are suffering, especially after COVID. I know that a lot of nonprofits had to close their doors as well, just like profit companies. And I think that what you are doing is a service that really need. And I think teaching them how to fish is the best way because now they'll know how to go buy their own fish, how to go get their own fish, actually. So I think it's the best solution. I love the fact that you can matchmake them. I think it's a great idea because not everyone has your skill, but also teaching them how to do it will also help them out so they don't have to come back to you and ask you to help them out. So
that's right.
Thank you for what you do.
Oh, thanks. I love what I do and I appreciate your time today.
Thank you for listening to Female Founders Podcast. That's it for this week's episode. Be sure to follow us on your favorite podcast app or connect with us on womel.com so that you don't miss our next episode. See you next time. Bye for now.